Validity. So this is the continuation for Chapter 6. Let us proceed to construct validity. Construct validity is a judgment about the appropriateness of inferences drawn from test scores regarding individual standings on a variable called a construct. It is a degree to which a test measures what it claims or purports to be measuring. Construct validity is one of the three main types of validity evidence alongside content validity and criterion validity. Construct validity is the appropriateness of inferences made of the basis of observations or measurements of a test score, specifically whether a test measures the intended construct. As an example, think about a general knowledge test of basic algebra. If a test is designed to assess knowledge of facts concerning rate, time, distance, and their interrelationship with one another, but test questions are phrased in long and complex reading passages, then perhaps reading skills are inadvertently being measured instead of factual knowledge of basic algebra. So next is construct. It is an informed, scientific idea developed or hypothesized to describe or explain behavior. Construct are unobservable, presupposed or underlying traits that a test developer may invoke to describe test behavior or criterion performance. The researchers investigating a test's construct validity must formulate hypotheses about the expected behavior of high scores and low scores on the test. These hypotheses give rise to a tentative theory about the nature of the construct the test was designed to measure. For example, intelligence is a construct that may be invoked to describe why a student performs well in school. Another is anxiety. It is a construct that may be invoked to describe why a psychiatric patient paces the floor. And now we will proceed to the evidences of construct validity. A number of procedures may be used to provide different kinds of evidence that a test has construct validity. The various context techniques of construct validation may provide evidence. First is the test is homogeneous, measuring a single construct. Second, test scores increase or decrease as a function of age, the passage of time, or an experimental manipulation as theoretically predicted. Third, test scores obtained after some event or the mere passage of time, or post-test scores, differ from pretest scores as theoretically predicted. Fourth, test scores obtained by people from distinct groups vary as predicted by the theory. Fifth, test scores correlate with scores on other tests in accordance with what would be predicted from a theory that covers the manifestation of the construct in question. Later, it will be discussed one by one in the next slides. Evidence of homogeneity. When describing a test and its items, homogeneity refers to how uniform a test is in measuring a single concept. A test developer can increase test homogeneity in several ways. Consider, for example, a test of academic achievement that contains subtests in areas such as mathematics, spelling, and reading comprehension. The Pearson R could be used to correlate average subtest scores with the average total test score. Subtests that in the test developer's judgment do not correlate very well with the test as a whole might have to be reconstructed or eliminated, lest the test not measure the construct academic achievement. Item analysis procedures have also been employed in the quest for test homogeneity. One item analysis procedure focuses on the relationship between test takers' scores on individual items and their score on the entire test. Each item is analyzed with respect to how high scorers versus low scorers responded to it. If it is an academic test and if high scorers on the entire test for some reason tended to get that particular item wrong while low scorers on the test as a whole tended to get the item right, the item is obviously not a good one. The item should be eliminated in the interest of test homogeneity, among other considerations. Evidence of changes with age. Some constructs are expected to change over time. Reading rate, for example, tends to increase dramatically year by year from age 6 to the early teens. If a test score purports to be a measure of a construct that could be expected to change over time, then the test score, too, should show the same progressive changes with age to be considered a valid measure of the construct. For example, if children in grades 6, 7, 8, and 9 took a test of 8th grade vocabulary, then we would expect that the total number of items scored as correct from all the test protocols would increase as a function of the higher grade level of the test takers. Some constructs lend themselves more readily than others to predictions of change over time. Thus, although we may be able to predict that a gifted child's scores on a test of reading skills will increase over the course of the test taker's years of elementary and secondary education, we may not be able to predict with such confidence how a newlywed couple will score through the years on a test of marital satisfaction. This fact does not relegate a construct such as marital satisfaction to a lower stature than reading ability. Evidence of pre-test post-test changes. Evidence that test scores change as a result of some experience between a pretest and a post-test can be evidence of construct validity. Some of the more typical intervening experiences responsible for changes in test scores are formal education, a course of therapy or medication, and on-the-job experience. Of course, depending on the construct being measured, almost any intervening life experience could be predicted to yield changes in score from pretest to post-test. Reading an inspirational book, watching a TV talk show, undergoing surgery, serving a prison sentence, or the mere passage of time may each prove to be a potent intervening variable. One investigator cited in Roach et al. 1981 compared scores on that instrument before and after a sex therapy treatment program. Scores showed a significant change between pretest and post-test. A second post-test given 8 weeks later showed that scores remained stable, suggesting the instrument was reliable, whereas the pretest post-test measures were still significantly different. Such changes in scores in the predicted direction after the treatment program contribute to evidence of the construct validity for this test. Evidence from distinct groups, also referred to as the method of contrasted groups. One way of providing evidence for the validity of a test is to demonstrate that scores on the test vary in a predictable way as a function of membership in some group. The rationale here is that if a test is a valid measure of a particular construct, then test scores from groups of people who would be presumed to differ with respect to that construct should have correspondingly different test scores. For example, if it had been predicted that more of the construct would be exhibited on the test in question if the subject felt highly anxious, an experimental situation might be designed to make the subject feel highly anxious. Convergent evidence. Evidence for the construct validity of a particular test may converge from a number of sources, such as tests or measures designed to assess the same, similar construct. Convergent evidence for validity may come not only from correlations with tests purporting to measure an identical construct but also from correlations with measures purporting to measure related constructs. Consider, for example, a new test designed to measure the construct test anxiety. Generally speaking, we might expect high positive correlations between this new test and older, more established measures of test anxiety. However, we might also expect more moderate correlations between this new test and measures of general anxiety. Discriminant evidence, a validity coefficient showing little or a statistically insignificant relationship between test scores and/or other variables with which scores on the test being construct validated should not theoretically be correlated, provides discriminant evidence of construct validity, also known as discriminant validity. For example, self-esteem and intelligence should not relate too much in most research projects. In 1959, an experimental technique useful for examining both convergent and discriminant validity evidence was presented in Psychological Bulletin. This technique is called multi-trait multimethod, which means two or more methods. The multi-trait multimethod matrix is the matrix or table that results from correlating variables or traits within and between methods. Values for any number of traits, such as aggressiveness or extroversion, as obtained by various methods, such as behavioral observation or a personality test, are inserted into the table, and the resulting matrix of correlations provides insight with respect to both the convergent and the discriminant validity of the methods used. For an interesting real-life application of the multi-trait multimethod technique is used to better understand tests. The researchers used this technique to explore construct validity-related questions regarding a test called the Compulsive Sexual Behavior Inventory. Factor analysis is a shorthand term for a class of mathematical procedures designed to identify factors or specific variables that are typically attributes, characteristics, or dimensions on which people may differ. Suppose a factor analysis identified a common factor being measured by two hypothetical instruments, a bulimia test and an anorexia test. This common factor would have to be named. One factor analyst looking at the data and the items of each test might christen the common factor an eating disorder factor. Another factor analyst examining exactly the same materials might label the common factor a body weight preoccupation factor. Exploratory factor analysis typically entails estimating, or extracting factors, deciding how many factors to retain, and rotating factors to an interpretable orientation. For example, a depression scale with the underlying concepts of depressed mood, fatigue and exhaustion, and social dysfunction can first be developed with a sample of rural U.S. women using an exploratory factor analysis. Confirmatory factor analysis researchers test the degree to which a hypothetical model, which includes factors, fits the actual data. For example, if you would like to next use that scale in a sample of urban U.S. women, you would use a confirmatory factor analysis to validate the depression scale in your new sample. Factor loading conveys information about the extent to which the factor determines the test score or scores. For example, a new test purporting to measure bulimia, for example, can be factor analyzed with other known measures of bulimia, as well as with other kinds of measures, such as measures of intelligence, self-esteem, general anxiety, anorexia, or perfectionism. High factor loadings by the new test on a bulimia factor would provide convergent evidence of construct validity. Moderate to low factor loadings by the new test with respect to measures of other eating disorders such as anorexia would provide discriminant evidence of construct validity. Now we will proceed to validity, bias, and fairness. For psychometricians, bias is a factor inherent in a test that systematically prevents accurate, impartial measurement. Psychometricians have developed the technical means to identify and remedy bias, at least in the mathematical sense. As a simple illustration, consider a test we will call the flip coin test (FCT). The equipment needed to conduct this test is a two-sided coin. One side, heads, has the image of a profile and the other side, tails, does not. The FCT would be considered biased if the instrument, the coin, were weighted so that either heads or tails appears more frequently than by chance alone. If the test in question were an intelligence test, the test would be considered biased if it were constructed so that people who had brown eyes consistently and systematically obtained higher scores than people with green eyes, assuming, of course, that in reality people with brown eyes are not generally more intelligent than people with green eyes. Rating error is a judgment resulting from the intentional or unintentional misuse of a rating scale. Thus, for example, a leniency error, also known as a generosity error, is, as its name implies, an error in rating that arises from the tendency on the part of the rater to be lenient in scoring, marking, and/or grading. In psychotherapy settings, for example, it is not unheard of for supervisors to be a bit too generous or too lenient in their ratings of their supervises. Reviewing the literature on psychotherapy supervision and supervision in other disciplines, concluded that raters' judgments of psychotherapy supervisees' competency are compromised by leniency errors. In severity error, rater exhibits general and systematic reluctance to giving ratings at either the positive or negative extreme. Movie critics who pan just about everything they review may be guilty of severity errors. Of course, that is only true if they review a wide range of movies that might consensually be viewed as good and bad. Rating error overcome restriction of range rating errors is to use rankings, procedure that requires the rater to measure individuals against one another instead of against an absolute scale. By using rankings instead of ratings, the rater, now the ranker, is forced to select first, second, third choices, and so forth. Halo effect describes the fact that, for some raters, some ratees can do no wrong. More specifically, a halo effect may also be defined as a tendency to give a particular ratee a higher rating than he or she objectively deserves because of the rater's failure to discriminate among conceptually distinct and potentially independent aspects of a ratee's behavior. Just for the sake of example, and not for a moment because we believe it is even in the realm of possibility, let's suppose Lady Gaga consented to write and deliver a speech on multivariate analysis. Her speech probably would earn much higher all-around ratings if given before the founding chapter of the Lady Gaga fan club than if delivered before and rated by the membership of, say, the Royal Statistical Society. This would be true even in the highly improbable case that the members of each group were equally savvy with respect to multivariate analysis. We would expect the halo effect to be operative at full power as Lady Gaga spoke before her diehard fans. Let's suppose Lady Gaga consented to write and deliver a speech on multivariate analysis. Her speech probably would earn much higher all-around ratings if given before the founding chapter of the Lady Gaga fan club than if delivered before and rated by the membership of, say, the Royal Statistical Society. This would be true even in the highly improbable case that the members of each group were equally savvy with respect to multivariate analysis. We would expect the halo effect to be operative at full power as Lady Gaga spoke before her diehard fans. Test fairness. We will define fairness in a psychometric context as the extent to which a test is used in an impartial, just, and equitable way. Some tests, for example, have been labeled unfair because they discriminate among groups of people. The reasoning here goes something like this: although individual differences exist, it is a truism that all people are created equal. Accordingly, any differences found among groups of people on any psychological trait must be an artifact of an unfair or biased test. We would all like to believe that people are equal in every way and that all people are capable of rising to the same heights given equal opportunity. A more realistic view would appear to be that each person is capable of fulfilling a personal potential. Because people differ so obviously with respect to physical traits, one would be hard put to believe that psychological differences found to exist between individuals, and groups of individuals, are purely a function of inadequate tests. Again, although a test is not inherently unfair or biased simply because it is a tool by which group differences are found, the use of the test data, like the use of any data, can be unfair.